Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this video. There's the greeting of the day. I'm Kevin Vargas, and today I kind of want to start off with a question. What's something that never sleeps, doesn't have the desire to sleep, and can go and fully function without sleeping? That's New York. That's the place that we're going to go ahead and talk about. But where in New York? New York is so huge. Correct. We're going to go to the heart of New York. Asterisk. Harlem, New York. Now, everyone, depending on their neighborhood, is going to say that their neighborhood is the heart of New York. But for this case, Harlem is the heart of New York. Harlem, New York. Where you see all walks of life. Where you see all types of races. Where you see all types of people. But we're going to focus on one person. One person in particular today. That is Daniel Day, also known as Dapper Dan, who we'll be referring to as Dap. Dap grew up in kind of the poorer area of Harlem, New York. And this is important because in Harlem, New York, you can see everyone. You can see a lot of people. You can see from the poorest of the poor to the middle of middle. And the middle is the highest. That's why I say the middle of the middle. It's all about socioeconomic class. It's always been about socioeconomic class. The middle did not want to be with the lowest, but they had no choice because they're from Harlem up until later on. They didn't have that Harlem pride that everyone else had. They had the drive that lives in Harlem. And that's what makes Harlem unique, the drive. Now, what's so important about the drive? The drive starts from working. Now, Dap was born into a really hard-working family. Both mom and dad were in the picture. But so were 6 other kids, not including Dan, making a total of 7. Now, how was this lifestyle funded? Frugally, yet aesthetically. Dap's dad worked 3 jobs in order to support them, and the mother stayed home to support the kids because they're both at work. Would you leave 7 kids alone? I wouldn't even leave 1 alone. That's where the hustle started. Because of the socioeconomic class that Dap was in, money started running through his mind. Money started going. How can I make money? How can I go ahead and make my life better? Already, a hustler mentality. How can I get more money? Well, young Daniel had the option of being really educated or be shaped by the hustle. But again, New York is the place for innovation. It's one of the original 13 colonies, so Dap did what a lot of people didn't think. Both. Why can't we do both? Well, in his early years, in order to hustle, in order to make money, Dap was a gambler. Dap was a hustler. He took to the streets. He attended to the streets. He started making money. He started flipping. He started putting the odds, making a lot while losing a lot. But then he started learning. He started catching on. He started learning his sleight of hand. He started working with his hands, which his hands make him his money and will continue making his money for years to come to this day. Dan was smart. So there's brains there. But did you know how much brains? Upon applying to Columbia University, he also got a full ride, which is really impressive. But at the same time, he had a very different opportunity. Full ride to Columbia, trip to Africa. Which one would you pick? Education, opportunity. That's the one that Dan chose. Dan chose opportunity. Something to learn by. Always look for the opportunity. College will be there. It's up to you to enroll right back, right? But opportunity, you have to seize it while it's there because the opportunity can be swept in a second. With that, taking this opportunity, he ended up in Africa, just journeying, walking through, going from house to house, family to family, because that's the type of program that he was in. And he stumbled upon this really interesting town where they had a very significant event. From the jungle to a rumble. Rumble in the jungle. It was a Muhammad Ali fight, is what I'm trying to say. A boxing fight, a boxing inauguration. However, something happened in this fight that it had to be delayed. It had to be moved. So Dap had no other option but to look through the town. And what did he find? But a tailor. Not just any tailor. The most exquisite tailoring and attention to detail with the most intriguing fabrics that Dap has seen. In Africa, a place that's known for being poor, for not having resources, for being hungry. The only thing they were hungry for is aspiration and dreams, which fed Dap. Dap went in, saw what the guy offered, saw that the seams, saw that the tailoring, saw that the stitching was like nothing he's seen before. So what do you see whenever you see something that you really, really like? Well, you think how much it is, and then you turn right around. But not Dap. He looked at it and said, let me get one. So upon returning to the United States, Dap returned with what seemed like a really amazing suit that you could probably get in the States, sure, but he left with something more important, dream and a new goal. And that's what Dap will work for. He was so amazed by the tailoring that someone else could do this that he said he could do it himself. And what did he want to do? He wanted to do clothes, as Dap said. I didn't have the money to open a store right away, but I wasn't gonna wait for a handout. So I started selling clothes out of my car. Is that not aspiration? Is that not hustling? The hustling never left Dan. After selling his clothes out of his car, in 1982, Dapper Dan opened his first boutique. But who is he going to attract to? As mentioned earlier, the middle of the middler hated poor people. Classism was at its peak around this time. Who's gonna buy from the hustler Harlem scum? Other hustler Harlem scum. And that is what Dap knew. So what did he do in order to cater to these hustlers? He made his boutique 24/7. Walmart's not even 24/7 anymore. But it was also for everyone that walks Harlem to feel inspired, to feel seen, because that's the goal of this brand. Dap didn't create fashion. He cultivated culture using fashion. He created a space for people who saw fashion as more than clothes, but rather a statement. Their statement of power. Their statement of money. Their statement of luxury. And that's what hustlers revolve around. Hustlers, gangsters, and other people who had status did this by showing off. However, showing off was hard at this time. So what did gangsters do? Or what was the normal thing? Well, it was to have a well-tailored suit. It was to have well-tailored clothes. But that's not enough. You have to have a little bit of money, a little bit of swag hanging off of your pocket. You show power right there. How so? No one's gonna snag that from you. Remember, we're in the 80s. What's so important? Sex appeal. Sex appeal is important. A man shows power at this time by having as many women as possible. Here comes the gangster. Here comes his statement. But his statement is holding another statement that catches everyone's eye. That statement is clutching a clutch. Not just any clutch, but they're clutching the LV clutch. Take a shot every time I say clutch. Just kidding. I don't condone drinking. Anyways, they had this clutch that had LV in gold branded letters. Everyone saw that bag. Everyone was wild. Everyone was amazed. Something about a shiny object just makes people's heads turn. But Dap isn't a consumer. Dap saw that everyone noticed it and thought to himself, that's nothing but $5 worth of vinyl, but people are breaking their necks for it. To which Dap said to himself, if I can make people walk around that to look like this logo, I can change the world. I can change people. So that's what he did. Why? Then Dap connected the dots. It's that logo. It's that branding. People recognize that logo. People recognize that that's power, that that's status, that's money. Dap was able to recognize that it was never about the material. It was never about the material. It was never about what it was made out of. Because Dapper Dan worked with fur. Dapper Dan worked with leather. Mixed them both, created fantastic pieces. But it was missing something. It was missing recognition. The recognition that LV, that Gucci, that Tom Ford E, that's not what it's called. That Fendi. Damn it. Well, that's staying in. Dapper Dan started experimenting. Dapper Dan started to go ahead and get as much of these products with these logos as he could, start cutting them up, start sewing them, start making pieces. That way these people could feel that luxury, that statement, that money, that power. Boom! If only the LV purses had this logo, you couldn't just buy the product because then it's gonna be the same all the time. There's no customizability. You're not changing anything, you're just recreating it. To which Dan thought, the only way to make this better is to customize it. I can't keep cutting out products and making them my own. I have to start making my own from scratch. I have to learn how to print these logos on cotton, on leather, on linen, on silk. Then I can do something for myself. And that's exactly what he did. And boy, this grabs everyone's eyes. LL Cool J, Rakim, Salt and Pepper, Dapper Dan Customs Creations were just showcasing the integration of hip hop. It was right there, right in front of our eyes, to customize it, to match the Africanism aesthetics that someone wanted to cultivate, or just to go ahead and show certain pride for their hometown, or to show Jamaican colors because, hey, I'm from Jamaica, can you do something? Hey, I want my name. Hey, can you add pearls? The customizability that Dap offered, and to show that braggadocio kind of swag that they always talk about, made people believe, wow, Gucci did that for them. No, Dap did it. And only those who knew that Gucci wasn't doing these customs, that Louis Vuitton wasn't doing these customs, that Fendi wasn't doing these customs. They weren't doing that for these hip-hop artists. It was Dap. So soon, the icons of hip-hop and urban culture in New York and eventually across the world were wearing Dapper Dan's design. The cultural exchange between high fashion and style and even the grit and rawness of hip-hop made the street style complete. Dapper Dan was hitting every pillar of hip-hop. The music, because you would see it, you hear it, you see it, Dapper Dan. There's multiple lyrics with Dapper Dan just in it. Art. The art that Dapper Dan is creating for these artists to feel unique, and his customs, and just everything that Dap is creating, he's doing for these artists. So music, art, fashion. Have you been listening? That's the whole thing that we're talking about. Dance. They had to move. They had to create some aesthetics, some functionality into the dance of hip hop. And I mean, who's dancing in these, you know? It's amazing that someone can move with such high-end logo that's supposed to be luxury, and you're on the floor, you're popping, you're locking. What's going on here? Dapper Dan created a transition of why people use clothes, why people started moving in clothes and actually wearing their clothes. You can't be at a climax 24/7. Business was booming, everything was happening, everything was working for Dap. Who's that? The feds, duh. People started reporting this. So, like a boxer, he kept fighting. And his legacy was going and going and going. And after a few years of being ignored by the biggest fashion house that anyone can think of, where multiple songs, again, are made about their flip-flops.
That's some Gucci flip-flops.
Gucci flip-flops.
That finally recognized the recognition everyone knew they deserved. 30 years later, into the industry, Gucci acknowledges influence. Now, the topic that I kind of want to bring up is, who stole whose ideas? Is it inspiration? Is it appropriation? Well, no, it's not appropriation. This is art. There's no copying in art. You may be inspired by something, but at first, Dan was just modifying certain things. Dap added the twist and started adding colors, started adding things that these brands didn't think of, because Dap was a visionary. He was a visionary. To which the brands saw, hey, that's our logo. We can do something like that. We're the powerhouse. We're the mitochondria. They ripped off someone who's ripping them off. I think that's just the game. I don't think it was really appropriation. The only time where it might be appropriation is whenever you wash out what makes it important. What makes something appropriation? It's when you wash something out that makes it important. To these fashion houses, their logo was important. To Dapper Dan, having culture was more important. Therefore, he added color. Therefore, he customized it. He added either American flags, Jamaican colors, names, pearls, things that you normally wouldn't see in clothes at the time. Furs, leather accents, all of that. He added the culture. He added what made those people famous even more famous, what they stood for. Dap added values, art, and statements, power, money, into these statements that these brands just couldn't think of because it would mess up the prestige of their brand. But after seeing the success, someone was hungry and took a bite right off of those designs. Tom Ford, Fendi, Louis Vuitton, and Gucci all added more color, all added some of a little bit of everything that Dap created. And we even see a reference that Tom Ford, while he was at Gucci, did. And people didn't like that. Which then, later on, got Dap his collab with Gucci. Some say, no, he was paying homage. But Dap was not referenced in that runway whatsoever. Up until the internet kind of got angry. And they had no other choice but to honor Dap. But it's a full-time circle. From wishing he can go ahead and afford that, from wishing he could get his hands on a collection from Gucci, he made the collection. He was the main focus of the collection. So what might have ended up, or what might have started as appropriation, ended up as appreciation. They appreciated each other. Because I would say that without Dap, maybe these fashion houses wouldn't be as successful and they wouldn't have as long as a run as they did. Because there's so many that have died down. But in order to appeal to the masses, logos are huge because they're a part of something, or at least so they feel. Dapper Dan didn't just change fashion. He changed the way we see culture. His story is really a statement and a testament to what can happen if, in creativity, from everything that you live. If you create what you live and you encapsulate what you live, your culture, your day-to-day, and you emphasize it, everything just kind of comes together and things happen to you. Harlem, once a backdrop to his journey, is now a symbol to the identity of high fashion. Now, people think of Harlem as the fashion house because that's where Dap comes from. And that's where Dap still is to this day. The important thing that Dap wants is for people to be inspired. Dap still has his main boutique in Harlem to this day. It's by appointment only, but he's easily accessible to the people in Harlem to create an impact for Black youth. That's what makes him unique. He's still actively surrounded by his culture. To which, if you're in the heart of your culture, no one can take your culture before you can. You're going to create the culture. You're going to go ahead and push the culture forward, which makes it super different. Can someone steal culture from you? No, because you already have it. You encapsulate it. They might try and mock it, but they're going to look silly doing it because they don't understand what it's like to be a Harlemite. I'm not from Harlem. How am I supposed to give them a nickname? I can't because I'm not there. So if I'm not from Harlem, if I'm not from New York, if I'm not from America, how am I supposed to appeal? And how am I supposed to take that culture to encapsulate it? I can only take what's already been done because I'm not there. I can't see how these people live. That's the advantage that Dapper Dan has. And that's the advantage that he will always have. Being one step ahead because he is culture. And he will always encapsulate culture. Before everyone else can see it, he's going to see it first. He's going to create it first. And someone else is just going to follow along and then follow along. Dapper Dan is your favorite designer's favorite designer. Dapper Dan's is your favorite creator's favorite creator. He inspires everyone because he is culture. And without Dapper Dan, I don't think these fashion houses would have stood the test of time because they didn't appeal to the masses. They didn't know what the people wanted. Without Dapper Dan, they wouldn't know that people want to be walking billboards, logo everywhere. But because of Dapper Dan, they found out, hey, if we make our quality or our expenses of this lower but keep the same margins high, we're going to see a high percentage of profit because it doesn't take more than $30 to make $50,000 of a screen printed shirt with a monogram, a logo. And if you charge $300, I mean, I'm not a mathematician. I'm not getting my degree in math. I can tell you the percentage, but that's a really high margin for profit to fund their couture, to fund everything else that they want to do. Let the advertising do itself. Let the people buy because let's take advantage of the demographic that wants to be a part of something bigger but probably can't because there's a gap. It's always about the socio-economical gap. But hey, that's a topic for another day.